Hi, this is us adjusting cameras and whatnot.
Good morning.
Good morning. We'll show you a banner for a moment.
Little light banter.
Good morning.
Oh, well, in that case, we should bring Ozzy into it since he's decided to join the discussion. Hey, Ozzy. Hey, buddy. What's up? He's busy cleaning himself.
As
He
you
likes
should. He's
he likes to
fine.
look his best on air. You should see the glare that Libby just gave me because I was talking to Ozzy.
Yes. We are possibly going to be in the midst of cat jealousy.
Yep.
That can be very exciting. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how to turn this. Look, it's our portable studio.
Get scratched or what?
Baby.
We've been fighting with raccoons again.
Let's I'm trying to figure out the angle here because right now you're looking kind of small and far away.
Hello.
And we don't want that. We don't want you to be small and far away.
All right.
We should be large and in charge. So we're just,
Like this.
yeah, well, rather than apparently moving you, I'm trying to move the table here. So
Good on you.
good.
So I scoot closer to
You should, yeah, maybe that'd help. Just
Here we go.
here, this is our milieu. Good morning, John. Good morning, everyone. I think we're more or less there.
All right, we have the okay. All right, so this is now Bridge to a Better World. That's the name of this program. I'm Teresa Mitchell, and that's Ani
Hi.
Raven Haynes. And we just like to point out that workers are striking all over the place, and I have a little bit of a list that I'd like to lay on you. So I'll just put my teleprompter up here. As the New York Times, that place is not actually difficult to pronounce, says, as television and movie writers started their 101st day on strike on Thursday, the leaders of the union said they had agreed to formally restart negotiations with studios for a new 3-year contract. The Writers Guild negotiating committee is quoted saying, our committee returns to the bargaining table ready to make a fair deal, knowing the unified WGA membership stands behind us and buoyed by the ongoing support of our union allies. The session will take place in Los Angeles on Friday. And I'm stoked about this because I like my jokes. I like to listen to the late night jokes every weeknight.
It has been, our lives have all been a little bit harder without Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers.
I need my jokes.
Yeah.
No jokes. So,
Not to mention John Oliver
I know.
and the rest. I mean, it's just really, it's cruel and unusual. Okay, carry on.
Yeah, and just to make things clear, we totally support the strikers on this. The Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, you can hiss now if you want, which bargains on behalf of entertainment companies, declined to comment. Carol Lombardini, the Alliance's president, contacted the Writers Guild on Wednesday with a request to return to formal negotiations. So all this time they haven't even been talking.
Yeah.
So they're just like, no, we're going to have artificial intelligence replace you guys forever anytime we feel like it. Like one of the things they want to do, I mean, aside from the writers, is they want to get extras, take pictures of the extras, do all kinds of 3D stuff, and then have that extras image forever to be produced by artificial intelligence without ever having to pay the puny amount that they pay to an extra in the first place ever again, just so they can keep it in their own pockets, and I don't know, juggle it in their mansions. The appeal followed a informal sidebar session between the two sides late last week, so something's moving now, and I'm glad to hear it. And speaking of moving, striking Amazon delivery drivers and dispatchers from Palmdale, California, extended their picket line to a fulfillment center, the OAK4 in California's Central Valley today, well, that's yesterday actually, to demand the e-commerce giant stop its unfair labor practices. The growing strike will continue until Amazon reinstates the unlawfully terminated Palmdale employees, recognizes the Teamsters respects the contract negotiated by the workers, and bargains with the Teamsters union to address low pay and dangerous working conditions. I just like the way that's phrased.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Like, stand up and pay attention there, Mr. That's Bezos.
Well, yeah,
Mr.
he
Billionaire
retired.
Bezos. Whatever.
He sold the company,
Yeah.
stuff and such. Now it's other people becoming obscenely rich from the
Yeah.
workers' blood.
Yeah.
And so then what happens there? There is a good quote
Well, then there was a clawback of all the wealth that no, there wasn't. $1 trillion. Here's a quote from Brandon Vides, a striking Amazon driver. Quote, $1 trillion company like Amazon can do better than $19.75 an hour for the people who deliver its packages. He said, we are on strike to put an end to Amazon's unfair labor practices and force this company to take responsibility for the well-being of its workers, end quote.
I think it's a really strong quote. I think that's, obvious. It's really obvious. And yet we actually do need to say that sort of thing because, I think that the tides have turned. I think that more and more people now in the U.S. are becoming aware that that the workers have built the country, that it's been the oppression of the workers that have allowed super billionaires to exist. And so I think that there's a little bit of sentiment tide is turning, but I also think it's important to underscore that, when you have billion-dollar companies, trillion-dollar companies, they can afford to pay their workers more than minimum wage.
It's been so hard. I mean, most of my working life, I've been so pro-union, and I've even had to form a union once. And every time you even talk about it, especially I remember in Texas, the first thing you hear is like, "Oh, unions are corrupt." Just makes me want to slap my own head.
Yeah. When I tried to form a union once, I was called a traitor to the movement because I've always worked for nonprofits, and of course, there's the higher goal of social change for all, but really on the backs of the workers, that doesn't make any sense. We are both unabashedly pro-union, and I am excited that we are seeing an increase again in worker power.
There's definitely a change in the air. City workers are striking or threatening to strike in Los Angeles and Van Nuys, California. Axios writes that union workers at Powell's Books right here in Portland authorized to strike Wednesday, calling for a contract that includes access to a living wage and affordable health care. Excuse me.
And I think maybe in the midst of all this, what I'd like to say is, I am excited about workers organizing. I'm excited about worker power. But strikes are kind of a drag for the workers themselves. It means unless they are belonging to a union that has a major strike fund, and most unions really don't, that it's going to be a hardship. And so what I would like to put out there is it's time for the owners to just, find their conscience, to realize that this is an unsustainable system and that they can avert being seen as villainous, greed-mongering bad guys if they could just come to the table and negotiate with workers in good faith so that we can all share in the riches of the land.
I think Generation Z especially has realized that they can either fight for their rights or they can be serfs forever.
Yeah.
So
Go Gen Z.
Speaking of the Powell's Books, so while authorizing a strike does not mean a strike will happen, the move puts pressure on the independent bookseller ahead of its next bargaining session with union members later this month, and any strike would be the first in 2 decades for Powell's. And the state of play right now is Michelle Carroll, a member of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 5's bargaining team, Strike Fund, told Axios they've been in negotiations with the company since February and remain at a standstill. So all kinds of labor stuff is happening. I'm fired about it.
It's cool. It's very good.
Now, changing subjects, the seditious ex-president remains on trial in 3 different courts. He must answer for trying to steal votes in Georgia, for stealing classified documents in Florida, and for trying to overthrow what is left of American democracy on January 6, 2021. According to the Guardian, the indictments against the president are, according to Nancy Pelosi, the indictments against the president are exquisite. No one can say exquisite like Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
So she told a New York magazine that in an interview.
I think her pronunciation of poo-poo is better.
She's quoted saying they're beautiful and intricate, and they probably have a better chance of conviction than anything I would come up with, end quote. Pelosi's words to New York magazine seem likely to prompt a response from Trump, whom she frequently clashed with when she was speaker and he was in the Oval Office. In one high-profile incident in February 2020, Pelosi famously tore up a Trump speech after his State of the Union address.
Remember her sideways clap?
Yeah, sideways clap, and she was pretty stylish in tearing apart the speech.
That was.
It wasn't just like, it was like Here goes this.
Yes.
I'm tearing it apart.
I gotta say, those were the one moment, the two moments, the three moments that I liked Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, that was some comedy. Pelosi also told the magazine that if Trump were to win the Republican nomination and the 2024 election against Joe Biden, quote, it would be a criminal enterprise in the White House. Don't even think of that. Don't even think of the world being on fire. It cannot happen, or we will not be the United States of America, end quotes. So Donald J. Trump's legal problems aren't just piling up, his legal bills are too, according to the New York Times. New financial reports show that the former president's various political committees, excuse me, and the super PAC backing him have used roughly 30 cents of every dollar spent so far this year on legal related costs. The total amounts to more than $27 million to lawyers and investigation related bills in the first 6 months of 2023, according to the New York Times
Louise.
analysis of federal records. That $27 million in legal costs includes Mr. Trump paying at least 8 law firms more than $1 million each in the first half of 2023, part of a sizable set of legal billings expected to spiral upward in the coming months as his overlapping criminal cases wind their way towards courtrooms in New York, Florida, and Washington, D.C.
That's not one, and not two,
but 3.
three.
It's exquisite. The
Yes.
The new disclosures reveal the remarkable degree to which Mr. Trump's political and legal cash are intermingled, much like his own political and legal fate, says the New York Times. So other things are happening in the world.
I also want to throw in there, that I have seen several pundits over the last week say this is nothing to be happy about. This is a sad, sad day for our country, tarnishing the, I don't know, Halcyon seat of the presidency, the sacred blah blah, and how it's just however way this goes, America loses. I want to say fucking bullshit on that, right? We got a dude who has run roughshod over the laws of the land, who has been as corrupt as they come, and flaunting it, and flaunting an open American style of fascism. And he's being actually called out and may be held to account by the law. I think that's actually a
Encouraging.
triumph
Yeah.
of democracy. I think that is actually something that could give me a little bit more hope in our land.
Yeah, sort of like when you have, I imagine American democracy as a car that's been in the barn for 40 years. You bring it out, you put a battery in it, you turn the switch, and you get it, because it's not going anywhere. But recently we got, that's encouraging.
That's encouraging. Now it's time to look at the vacuum leaks.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on.
So things are happening, unfortunately, around the world. I was, like all of you, I was shocked to see the Maui fire. I understand it's like 2/3 as big as the Camp Fire. It's so huge. It was so fast. It had people running into the ocean to save themselves, and at least 55 people weren't able to save themselves. And I'm going to imagine that's people who just couldn't run all the way to the ocean. Well, the flames came roaring with the wind behind them.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. And I saw some articles popping up yesterday, and I really don't know about this. I really don't know. But it seemed a little like victim blaming to me. Let me explain. Some articles popping up yesterday talking about how really, if you're in a wildfire situation, running into the water should be your last resort.
Oh, come on.
and I'm thinking, well, yeah, it probably was folks' last resort.
I mean, we're supposed to flap their arms and fly over it.
Right? Because it's dangerous to go in the water. You might get hypothermia. You might drown, or you might be overcome with smoke inhalation. Now, as a fire is raging towards you, I saw a couple of different articles. Okay, I don't know who wrote them. I didn't put that in my mind. But it reminded me a whole lot of the articles that came out a month ago as Arizona was experiencing however many tens of days over 100 and 105, 110 degrees. And suddenly there was a burst of articles about how to make yourself more heat resilient so that you aren't a casualty during a major heat-related event. Now, it's good to educate yourself. It's good to know. um, how one might become more resilient in heat related events. It's good to know how to, best protect yourself from raging wildfires, but to say it's your responsibility to make yourself more heat resilient and to find a safe place, not in the water, to be while wildfires race through your town. That's putting the responsibility wholly in the wrong place. We need to seriously discuss climate change. We need to get uh, uh, we need to actually get settlements from big oil. First, we need to stop using so much carbon heavy energy sources. We need to actually implement the Green New Deal, the new Green Deal. We need to implement climate mitigation strategies. We need to address the real problem and support the people that are actually in harm's way without saying, jumping into water and just being a wimp around heat. What can we do? There's no saving you. We tried. I think that again, that's just putting the blame in entirely the wrong place and actually putting the focus of the discussion in the wrong place. It's on individual responsibility instead of climate destroying oligarchs.
Punditry at its worst. Well, anyway, in Niger, tensions are escalating between Niger's new military regime and the West African regional bloc that has ordered the deployment of troops to restore Niger's failing democracy. The first time I heard Niger, it was in a limerick, so I'll always say Niger and I'll always be wrong. Anyway, the ECOWAS bloc said on Thursday that it had directed a standby force to restore constitutional order in Niger after its Sunday deadline to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum expired. Hours earlier, two Western officials told Associated Press that Niger's junta had told a top U.S. diplomat that they would kill Bazoum if neighboring countries attempted any military intervention to restore his rule. So this is a mess. It's a mess for several reasons, for several regions as well. This reminds me of when I was trying to say a todos modos and it was coming out a todos monos in any monkeys.
Yes.
In any monkeys, this is going to be a mess because Niger is, you want to say?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, Niger is chock full of gold and uranium, and I guess the emphasis is on the uranium since obviously the Russia's not selling it anymore. So, and there is a drone base in Niger. It is, I think, it's the drone base 201 with the 409th Expeditionary. This is not a lot of soldiers. This is not heavily armed soldiers. This could be difficulty for them. The ECOWAS nations, let's see, Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, I think they put together an expeditionary force. God help everyone. It's going to be mostly Nigerian soldiers. Nigeria is landlocked, in a sense, luckily for them in terms of getting bombed because the U.S. can't just land one of their Marine Expeditionary aircraft carriers there. The closest one, I think, is probably right now in Greece. I suppose they could float the thing over to Libya and march hoorah through the Libyan desert. Oh, I bet that would be fun. Anyway, it's starting to look like in a few weeks there's going to be something horrible happening in Niger. And I would like to kind of militate against it. It's kind of a drag that there's been a coup, and it probably doesn't justify bombing. That's my bottom line. Whatever you do, don't bomb. And yet I don't have, people aren't talking about this, and that's the U.S. military reflex. If you can use military power, do so. So, bad things on the burner there in Niger. And that totes up my little international discussion for today. As I said, this is called This Is Now a Bridge to a Better World.
I was just going to mention it was the Washington Post actually putting out both of those. Actually, several people, several publications, including the CDC, have put out things about making yourself more heat resilient and how you can stay healthy even in extreme heat.
And if the peanut crop fails, you can eat bugs.
Um, but it was the Washington Post that had the article I was reading yesterday about how jumping into water should be your last resort during a wildfire. Yeah, I want to say that the accounts that I've heard really do resemble the talks around or the descriptions of Pompeii in the quickness of which the fire overtook
Yeah, it's terrifying.
the city, and it is absolutely terrifying.
And this is one of the things that could happen anywhere. You could have this high wind, a roaring fire, or these terrific floods. This is climate change.
This is climate change, and again, to address the underlying cause and to do everything we can to start mitigating those changes, that's what we need to be focusing on. Yeah, it's important to share information on how to stay safe, but to put the onus on people to live through what is going to become worsening and worsening climate. Hello, Ozzy. Climate disasters, weather disasters. That is the wrong way to go. So that's what I have to say. Is it time?
I think it's time.
All right. Well, I have a little tarot. I want to thank folks for joining us this morning. I'm also wanting to, I'll just go ahead and say, I will be starting a tarot workshop, a tarot class, 6 Tuesdays. It's a 6-part class. It'll start on the first Tuesday of September. Leave a message in the comments below if you are interested in taking this class. Yeah, it'll run 6 weeks starting the first Tuesday in September, and I'll have more details about that next week. But about half the spots are left. There's still time for you to join. So I wanted to put that out there. And what do I have for this week? I have this. It is the Queen of Swords. It is the Fool. And it is the Three of Cups. The Fool and the Three of Cups are inversed. Which in this deck, this is actually what these cards look like. In this deck, the inversion, the author of this deck puts a lot of meaning to, so I will include the inversion in this reading. What does it all mean? Queen of Swords is really looking at you being in the authority, being in the driver's seat of your mind, right? You are thinking keenly. Things are coming together, and we have a very natural curiosity about the world. It's important not to let yourself become bored, because sometimes those of us who love puzzles and love putting things together and love thinking about things can start spinning out and start overthinking things as a way of keeping ourselves from being bored. And that's where the Fool comes in. The Fool reminds us not to overthink things, to actually kind of trust our instinct, trust our gut, and know that that there is a balance there between our instinct and our keen analyzing brains. And it's a good time to really check into that balance. When we overthink things, we can kind of ruin a good thing. We can miss the beauty of the moment. It's not a bad thing to have an active intellect. It's just important to put it to good use, to do big problem solving and not to start nitpicking at our lives. Because again, a bored intellect can be a destructive force in our own lives. So don't overthink it. Accept the beauty of this world and that you are guided not only by your intellect, but by your intuition. And the Three of Cups generally talks about the harmony of hearts in a close circle, how the sum of its parts is greater than the whole, as everyone's light adds to each other. In this reading, in this inversion, it's important to sort of pull back and think about if you are either sort of holding yourself back or taking up a little bit too much space. Is it time for you to step forward or step back? See how your behavior is harmonizing again with the whole. And if there's some adjustments, some fine adjustments that you need to do, so that that family unit, that friend unit, the colleagues, work, however that is, can flourish and can actually get back to that harmony that allows each to shine brighter than they have alone. Right? So use your intuition and your intuition and your intellect to guide you in knowing, is it time to step forward or step back? Let your intellect and your intuition guide you in how to best reconnect and keep that bright flame vibrant between you and others in your circle. And that's what I have.
All right. Thank you.
And with that, we bid you a fondue. And we hope to see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hope you have apple for the fondue, or maybe some little bits of
Hard to say. I always have apple.
bits of bread.
I always have apple.
Yeah, apple's a good thing.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for joining us.
Our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea. Goodbye.